What's going on, guys? Capine here and welcome back. And before we get into it, I just wanted to take a second to thank you all so much for 1,000 subs. It's absolutely surreal to me to think there's that many of you who enjoy what I do here on the channel. Whether you are part of my first 100 or this is your first video, thank you for the incredible support, and I'm glad to be a part of a community as amazing as this one. Now on to the video. It's been a little bit since I posted last, but that's because I've got a good one here for you today. I'll be showcasing the team I used to hit Legend this season in the Open Great League. I featured this team here on the channel before, back in the beginning of the season, and I kept with it solely because of how good Shadow Walrein is. Plus, I'm kinda a big fan of the Walrus. Now we all know about the nerf to Icicle Spear that happened some seasons ago, but what makes it so good now is how it fits into the current meta with all the flyers around, Earthquake has coverage, and that a lot of teams aren't prepared for it anymore. I'll also be doing this video a little differently. Instead of showing the sets leading up to Legend, I'll be showing you how I play out some of the most common leads and save switches we are currently seeing, to hopefully give you a good idea of how to run this team and potentially make a push for any goals you are trying to reach this season. If you enjoy this different style of video, please be sure to let me know down in the comments, as well as by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. I'll also have the previous video featuring this team, as well as the team I used last season to hit Legend, since the meta hasn't really changed since then and that team is still extremely good, linked down below in the description. And with that, let's get right into the battles. Alright, getting to the first battle, we lead Walrein into Trevenant. This is great, this is exactly where we want to see it. We get to keep it away from our back line, and even though this matchup is still a little tricky for the Walrein, there is a right way to play it out. We play it by going to the 2 shields. You'll shield up the first Seed Bomb, throw your Icicle Spear to get their first shield their next Seed Bomb, and farm all the way down. You don't want to throw your Icicle Spear at all. You'll farm this Trevenant all the way down. You will be down 1 shield, but you will have switch advantage, and you'll almost have back-to-back Icicle Spears. Now, there is a bulk point that Trevenants can get, where if they're very extremely defensively weighted, your Powder Snows will be doing 1 less attack, 1 less damage, I should say, to the Trevenant, and that way you won't be able to Powder Snow down in time, but then you just switch and catch the Seed Bomb that they would get to onto your Medicham, and you're in a good situation regardless. But here, if you'll notice, my opponent didn't let me farm them down, so smart play by them, and they brought in their Lanturn instead. I noticed it was a Water Gun Lanturn, so I was able to build up to the Earthquake, get their final shield, and then it was very crucial that I built back up to an Icicle Spear and stored it before swapping out into my own Lanturn. Since again, they're not Spark, they can't apply fast move pressure to my Walrein, I needed that Icicle Spear stored, as you'll see right here, to take out that Trevenant so my Medicham doesn't have to face it. Back in comes that Lanturn. I'm going to throw off this Icicle Spear right away. This should just be enough to take out their Lanturn, and they have a Registeel back, so this is game over. As they are going to be able to throw Zap Cannon at me. They do get the debuff, but that is perfectly fine. I'm going to throw this Psychic right away for the chance at the Psychic defense drop. I don't get it, but we're still in a good situation, because all I need to do is just throw this Ice Punch right before. This won't take out the Registeel. It will bring it very low though. And it also puts the Registeel in the range where my Walrein could comfortably deal with it, and that's a good game. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, Walrein into Registeel. We're going to want to switch into our Lanturn right away here, as Lanturn doesn't have a bad matchup against Registeel. It's pretty neutral, and I'm going for the Thunderbolt right away because I want to get off as much raw damage as possible before they could potentially debuff my attack with the Zap Cannon. I'm also switching Lanturn here just in case they have the anti-fighter in the back like a Trevenant. We're looking to bait out a Trev. But in this case, it doesn't look like my opponent has a Trev, as they bring in an Altaria instead. That's just fine. I'm going to barely be able to make this next Thunderbolt. I am debuffed, so Altaria can safely tank both of these Thunderbolts. And I'm going to hard swap in my Walrein. Because our switch clocks are desynced a little bit from them staying in with the Registeel, I can take advantage of it by getting rid of this Altaria, as well as saving my Lanturn for potential sack swap in the end game. So down goes Altaria. I'm going to build up to Earthquake and bait with an Icicle Spear. Very risky bait, but a huge reward if so, and we do get the bait, which is fantastic because now I can load up. I wasn't going to be able to make another Earthquake, but I did also want to get off this Icicle Spear damage, but my opponent actually lost count and they end up giving up a shield, and that is absolutely huge. So now my Medicham should be able to close out this game with a shield, whether it was actually a Trevenant in the back and they were predicting my Lanturn bait or not. Medicham up a shield can deal with it, no problem. I do go for a little cheeky catch there. Unfortunately, I don't get it. That's alright, because I can just shield up this move and get off an Ice Punch. And my opponent does full send the Earthquake, as that was their win condition. We take out the Gliscor, and from here, we are in a good position to finish this game, as the Registeel was dry on energy, so we're counting. They have to go for the Zap Cannon, as a Focus Blast won't take me out there, but we get to it on the CMP tie, and that's a good game. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Walrein into Medicham. I'm going to safe swap into my Lanturn here, since most Medi leads don't have a good answer to Lanturn in the back. They're forced to stay in, therefore freeing up my Walrein for the end game. And right here, it's absolutely crucial we throw our Thunderbolt first. Since we swapped, we are now one turn behind. If we throw first, that gets rid of the one turn desync and all is back to normal. If we allow them to throw first, they will effectively deny us a fast move of energy and damage. In this matchup, you'll see why that's huge right here. Because Lanturn can survive a Psychic and an Ice Punch and get off our second Thunderbolt with 1 HP and a Dream and take switch advantage just like that. And that's not something that happens in just this scenario you're seeing. That happens in every single Medi and Lanturn matchup. They throw a Psychic and Ice Punch, you survive with 1 HP and get off both your Thunderbolts to take switch. That's why it's absolutely crucial you throw your Thunderbolt first right after you switch in. And now here in the end game, they have a Powder Snow Shadow Alolan Ninetales against my Shadow Walrein, and I can just go straight for Icicle Spears here. Icicle Spear hits extremely hard even when resisted. That doesn't look like it's a resisted move landing, but it sure is, as the shadow on shadow damage is just absolutely incredible. My opponent full sends a Dazzling Gleam in that situation. Props to them going for their win condition. But I'm perfectly fine here. I can let this go, as this will just be a Weather Ball. And Medi is also in a pretty good position to close out the game as is. But alas, this is a Shadow Walrein showcase, as we do get to the Earthquake, take out the Alolan Sandslash, and my opponent concedes. GG's to them. Alright, next battle, we lead Walrein into Lanturn. We're going to safe swap into our Medi. As we just saw from the last battle, Lanturn wins the zeros against Medicham. So I am going to shield the first move, as they are most likely to go Thunderbolt for the very first move, which they do. And then go for a Psychic of my own. And you can already see the damage difference between the counters to the Sparks. My opponent does give up their first shield. They're going to go for another Thunderbolt of their own. And this is fine. I can let this go. I can survive this no problem. And I'm going to go for the Psychic on the CMP tie to my opponent's Surf. Here, this will get their final shield if they want to make a play for switch, which they do. And now I can either let this go or I can give up a shield. In this situation, I do give up my final shield because I can guarantee switch advantage. And I feel like switch is going to be more important in this situation. And my opponent catches onto Noctowl, and therefore it works perfectly fine, as I can align my Lanturn to this Noctowl. I will have to tank a Shadow Ball here, but Lanturn's very bulky. Not even below half health yet, and I'm going to load up, throw this Surf right before they get to their next move. This should just take out the Noctowl. For reference, Surf does, I want to say, around 26% to a Noctowl. So if a Noctowl is in red or just barely out of the red, a Surf will be enough to take it out. Back in comes my opponent's Lanturn. I'm going to throw that Surf to get rid of it. And now I'm in a pretty decent situation, as I can land this Thunderbolt here. which will do some nice damage to the Medicham. Swap in my Walrein. I'll be able to survive this Psychic, get to an Icicle Spear of my own that will then take out the Medi. But my opponent doesn't appear they're running Psychic. Most likely Power Up Punch, Ice Punch then. And that is even better for me, as this Icicle Spear will most definitely take out the Medicham. And that's a good game. GG's. Next battle, we lead Walrein into Sableye. Pretty neutral lead here for us. And this is fantastic because the Sableye lead, we get to keep it away from our Medicham. And it's also very, very likely that they're not running a Trevenant in the back, as ABA Ghost would just be kind of weird in this situation. But I'm going to throw my Icicle Spear, do some nice chip damage onto the Sableye. Whether they shield your first Icicle Spear or not, always no shield their first move. They never go for return. Whether they build up to it or not, they will never throw the return. At least I haven't encountered one. They go foul play every single time. They will be able to take out your Walrein and just barely survive, but they do have to give up a shield in the process. And you will then bring in your Lanturn. And if your opponent throws right away after taking out your Walrein, you can let it go because it's only a foul play. If they throw one more Shadow Claw when you bring in your Lanturn, then you will give up a shield because you have to respect the return, like my opponent does here. They throw one more and get to the return. Sometimes your opponent will just throw it right away because they want to get the move off, not knowing if they're going to survive the next fast move because they don't know what Pokemon they're going to come in with. Anyways, we now have Medicham onto Lanturn. We take out the Lanturn and they have a Galarian Stunfisk in the back, and we are in a good situation, as I'll be able to fire off this first Ice Punch, bring the G-Fist down to below half health, and I will give up a shield here. I was debating letting that go or not, but a Surf wouldn't have been quite enough to take out the G-Fist at that range, so I do give up the shield so I get more counter damage off. Now we have a Shadow, not a Shadow Charizard lead, a Medi safe swap. For every single Medi safe swap situation here, you have to throw an Ice Punch first, or an Icicle Spear first, and then dip into your own Medi. That way, you can guarantee switch advantage by matching shields with your opponent. As you see, they land a Psychic, but because I landed, and I'm not in danger of being farmed down, but because I threw that first Icicle Spear, my Psychic is now lethal. So that guarantees me alignment however I want it. And in this matchup, if they're leading a Shadow Charizard, they most likely have two good answers to Lanturn in the back. So I'm actually going to bring in my Lanturn here against the Shadow Charizard. And that's also the same thing with a Lickitung safe switch. If your opponent safe switches into Lickitung, throw an Icicle Spear first and then go into your Medicham. It makes the matchups a lot better for you, as people like to call it, chip and dip. On my Lanturn up against a Registeel in the back now, as that ended up being what Pokemon they had in the back. Not necessarily a good answer to Lanturn, but just for reference for future situations, they most likely will have a very strong answer to Lanturn. And here I just bring my Walrein to force my opponent to throw, because my Lanturn is in a very good position to close out this game. As I'm going to throw the Surf to take out the Reggie right before they get to their next move. They actually end up shielding, and that's great because I have the back-to-back moves. So now we can take out the Reggie. Back in comes the Shadow Charizard, and I'm feeling a little risky. I'm going to call it their baiting, which they do. And now we are in our fantastic situation, as we can shield up the next move and get off this Surf to take out the Charizard. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Walrein into Pelipper. Okay, in this one, we're actually going to be focusing on the safe switch again, of which is a Galarian Stunfisk. You're going to counter it with your Medicham, and you're gonna throw 2 ice punches, right? I like to throw the first ice punch on CMP tie to their first earthquake. It really doesn't matter when you throw the first one, just something I like to do. And you're gonna actually let the earthquake go. And now you're gonna load up throw again on the CMP tie to their next earthquake, right? So this way you get to take out the Stunfisk, don't get to give up a shield, and you leave with still a good chunk of health remaining to get to a move against whatever they come back in with, in this case the Pelipper. And that's another thing about flyer leads as well, whether it's a Pelipper lead, whether it's a Noctowl lead or a Charizard lead. If they swap out against your Shadow Walrein in the lead, you don't have to swap out as well, right? Because we have our Lanturn in the back as an answer to that. So you can stay in with your Shadow Walrein against whatever they swapped into, as long as you win switch advantage. You have to win switch advantage because you don't want that flyer aligned to your Medi. You have to keep it aligned to your Lanturn. Just something to keep in mind as well. Now we're looking into the Lanturn mirror. Lanturn will fire off a Thunderbolt. I'm gonna bait with a Surf here. My opponent essentially has to shield this given that they have a Pelipper in the back and they do not want their Pelipper aligned to my Lanturn. So that's a pretty safe shield bait. And now here my opponent has to go for a Thunderbolt if they want to take me out, and which I was perfectly okay with, but they end up going for a Surf bait. And I'm just barely able to hang on, bring in my own Walrein. Icicle Spear is enough from there. And with a shield remaining, we would be able to close out that match, no problem. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, Walrein into Galarian Stunfisk. After toying around with this lead many different ways, figuring out what was the best possible situation, what could put me in the best chance to win the end game, the way I like to play it out is I will tank the first Rock Slide. I will throw an Icicle Spear on what would be the CMP tied to their next Rock Slide. And because I tanked that first move of theirs, it makes it more likely for them to give up a shield and therefore successfully get an Icicle Spear bait. And if we do successfully Icicle Spear bait, I will then shield their next Rock Slide and then throw my Earthquake on the CMP tie to their next Rock Slide. This way we get both of their shields and we bring in our Medi, right? My opponent safe swaps into our Sableye here, so we can save our Medi and bring our Lanturn against the Sableye. But if they don't safe swap out, your Medi gets a full counter down, right? But if they do safe swap out into, let's say, a Trevenant, well, we now have a counter head start and a shield advantage. And with that, our Medicham will actually be able to take down the Trevenant, of which then frees up our Lanturn because it doesn't have to face the Trevenant. Also, a little tad bit of information to keep in mind, because who knows when you're ever going to need it, is that say Shadow Walrein is your last Pokemon against a Galarian Stunfisk as their last Pokemon, and you both have 2 shields. Shadow Walrein beats G-Fisk going straight Icicle Spear. It's kind of crazy. So use that to your advantage as you will. In this matchup, my opponent has an Alolan Muck in the back, so we can fire off this Ice Punch, do some nice damage to Alolan Muck. They are going to be able to get to a move right here. It's most likely an Acid Spray bait, but that is perfectly fine because we can shield it up, go for the Ice Punch or the Psychic, either one. We're not in danger of getting farmed down, and deliver the ending blow to this Alolan Muck. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Walrein into Gliscor. So we're going to be focusing on the safe swap in this situation again, of which is a Walrein. You want to instantly swap into your Medicham. This counter damage is absolutely crucial to a Walrein safe switch. As you'll see, we can counter almost all the way down. It's a little tricky with the Walrein. If the Walrein goes straight Icicle Spear, you can counter down without giving up a shield regardless of whether they're Shadow or regular Walrein. But that's given you like instantly swap because you need that counter damage. If they throw an Earthquake at some point, then you won't be able to counter down all the way. And you'll throw a Psychic one turn before they would get to a CMP tie to their next Icicle Spear, regardless of whether they're Shadow or not. And in this situation, as you saw earlier, my opponent threw an Earthquake first, so I wasn't going to be able to counter down all the way. Therefore, I threw my Psychic one turn before they would reach their Icicle Spear. And that, while we're on the topic of Medi swapping in to a Pokemon like Shadow Walrein, you can compare that to a Bastiodon safe swap. They safe swap a Bastiodon, you bring in your Medicham, don't throw a move, counter down all the way. You will take a Flamethrower, but they're not going to reach a second move, as you will leave with 100 energy to just start chucking out whatever they bring back in. A little something else to keep in mind right there. Registeel is going to go for a Focus Blast that will take out my Walrein. I'm in a pretty good situation here. This Icicle Spear will just not be enough to take out the Reggie, but that is okay, as we can shield up this move. Will only be a Focus Blast, and we are only one more Powder Snow away from this last Icicle Spear to take out their Gliscor. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Walrein into Alolan Ninetales. Now for Powder Snow Alolan Ninetales, the Shadow variant is actually better for us because we can go straight Icicle Spear. Obviously still build up to the Earthquake, but if they have a Shadow Alolan Ninetales, you can go straight Icicle Spear. The reason why I say build up to Earthquake is for the potential to get a shield from them, right? 3 Icicle Spears from Shadow Walrein take out a Shadow Ninetales. 3 Icicle Spears from Shadow Walrein do not take out a regular Alolan Ninetales. So the regular Alolan Ninetales is a little more bait dependent. And as you'll see here, I do end up getting a shield from them, luckily. So I can throw my next Icicle Spear. And since they went Dazzling Gleam the first time, they shield there. They're going to go for another Dazzling Gleam, of which I am more than happy to shield, because even though I go down, I'm now down a shield, I'm leaving with almost a completely healthy Walrein, as well as a ton of energy to use in the endgame, which is going to be very, very important. Also, another thing to keep in mind, your Shadow Walrein lead, you can survive a Dazzling Gleam from an Alolan Ninetales, right? After they throw off a couple Powder Snows, a Dazzling Gleam is not enough to take you out. If they have the Shadow variant, a Dazzling Gleam is enough to take you out after those Powder Snows. And since my opponent here has a Venusaur in the back, it is a very good for us that we banked this Icicle Spear for later to then try and combo play the Venusaur, which does end up getting their final shield, and they're forced to throw right away because they don't want to take any of my Powder Snow damage. Now I'm in a perfectly fine situation right here, right? All I have to do is make sure my opponent doesn't catch. So I'm going to load up, wait a turn. My opponent tries to catch, but we're patient. We don't let them. And now we leave with a Thunderbolt. And this will guarantee take out that Venusaur for a good game. GG's. Next battle, we lead Walrein into Noctowl. So in this one's also going to be focused on a safe swap, in this situation being Lanturn. We're going to want to meet it with our Medi right away. So whether it's a Lanturn Lead or a Lanturn safe swap, you want to bring in your own Medi as quick as possible. And I know before I said I like to shield the first one because it's most likely a Thunderbolt, but for some reason in this time I didn't, and it ended up being a great call because it is a Surf. And now, because I got their first shield with my Psychic, I will be able to get off another Psychic because this Thunderbolt won't kill. Remember, they have to go 2 Thunderbolts. As a Lanturn, you have to go 2 Thunderbolts to take out the Medicham. Otherwise, they'll reach 2 Psychics, which we do right here. And we have both shields, and I'm perfectly fine with losing Switch, but getting both of their shields. And I will give up one of mine right here just to preserve some HP. And my opponent actually makes a catch onto their own Noctowl. They realize their Noctowl is useless at this point, knowing that I have a Walrein and Lanturn of my own. So they're essentially just sacrificing it to my Lanturn here. I don't throw my Surf right away because I want to overfarm. I want to be able to get as much energy as possible. So I store that and then swap in my Walrein, get a perfect Powder Snow down. See what my opponent comes in with. They come in with the Lanturn, so then I farm up 2 more, throw on the CMP Tide to their next move. This will take out the Lanturn, and they have a Median back. And you'll see here, I don't throw the Icicle Spear right away. I farm up to the double Icicle Spear first, where if I'm only able to get to 1 move, I'm going to throw that Earthquake. If I get to 2 moves, then I'm going to throw both of my Icicle Spears, as 2 Icicle Spears do more damage than 1 Earthquake, and 1 Earthquake obviously does more damage than 1 Icicle Spear. GG's to my opponent. Bastiodon Lead. Throw 1 Powder Snow with your Walrein first, and then swap into your Medi. That way, it kind of tricks your opponent into throwing an extra Smackdown, so you get 1 extra counter against the Bastiodon. So you get 2 counters against the Bastiodon as opposed to normally just 1. And our opponent right here, they're going to bring in their Shadow Vic. We will build up to the Psychic first, bait with the Ice Punch, we get their shield, and now we get to go for the Psychic here. Ice Punch would be enough, but we go for the Psychic to potentially get that defense drop against the Shadow Vic. And again, very crucial. It may seem counterintuitive to switch our Medi into the Basti, right? As that's our hard counter. But if we safe swap our Lanturn, they bring in the Shadow Vic, and what's the Lanturn going to do? Absolutely nothing. We bring in our Medi, we're able to get both shields from them, and that sets our Lanturn up for a sweep as we land that Earthquake against the Medi, and now we're in a fantastic position. Because Lanturn, even though we're running Spark, still has a really good matchup against the Bastiodon. And here I'm over farming a little bit. My opponent's just going straight Power Up Punch, trying to get off as much damage as they can against my Lanturn. So I will farm up just a little bit. Make sure they're in the red, as Surf from this range is enough to take out the Medi. And now in comes the Basti. Just making sure I'm throwing my moves on good timing so I don't give them any free energy. For a 2-turn fast move to like Spark to a 3-turn fast move like Smackdown, you want to be throwing your charge moves after 1 Spark, 4 Sparks, 7 Sparks, or 10 Sparks. So just make sure you're throwing on good timing, maximizing your energy gain, and minimizing the amount of free turns you give your opponent. So right here, throwing off this last Surf, and this should be enough to take out the Basti for a good game. GG's. Now we'll be taking a look at the Pose and Pika Libre that we get as a reward for hitting Legend. As you'll see, I claim my 5-0 set, which brings me plenty enough over the threshold to Legend. We get the couple screenshots. For the record books, the poses come through. Now we're going to go take a look at the Palmer pose. There we go, selecting it. I think it's a very solid pose all around. Not the best ones they've had, but not terrible either. I like it. And now is the Pikachu Libre, not Little Cup eligible or shiny. Well, unfortunately, we're still hunting for that shiny Pika Libre. Haven't gotten it yet. Who knows, maybe we might get it next season, but that's still something that we are after. Taking a look at its IVs. Of course, per usual, we appropriately name it Season 14 Legend and favorite it as well. A bit of a longer video today, but that's because I really wanted to give you guys a solid breakdown of this team so you can have a lot of success when running it as well. And don't forget, I am a coach on Metafy, so while you're in the description following the links to the previous video of this team and last season's Legend team, you can click the link that'll take you right to my Metafy page where you can book a lesson for some PvP coaching. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.